What if the person you trusted most suddenly ceased to notice you? What if your laughter, your kindness, even your presence, once cherished, became invisible? You spin in circles inside your own mind, replaying every smile, every word, every silence. You ask, where did I lose their attention? And worse, where did I lose myself? You are not alone. In your chest lives a storm, anger, confusion, sadness, betrayal. You want answers. Maybe you want apologies. You want them back. But what if, in seeking that, you lose something more important? The calm inside you, the peace that does not depend on another's regard. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, wise Stoics would say that external validation is beyond your control. The only thing you truly hold is your judgment of events, how you interpret what happens. When someone stops valuing you, the event has happened. But how you respond, that is entirely yours. That is where freedom lies. This video will teach you one simple Stoic trick, not 10, not half a dozen, one trick so potent that if you practice it, you will begin to stand firm even when others drift away. You will begin to feel value where value cannot be taken, value that no absence can erase. Stay with me, because at the end, I'll share the part of the trick that most people overlook, and yet it is the heart. If you grasp that, you can transform not just how you feel about being ignored or undervalued, but how you feel about yourself. The trick does not require revenge, confrontation, or changing someone else. It requires something harder, changing your relationship with yourself. First, understand this. The world outside is fickle. People change, relationships shift, priorities evolve. To expect constancy outside is to invite suffering. The Stoics teach, anchor your worth inside yourself. When your value depends on another's continuously kind words, you give them the power to lift you and to plunge you. Shift the anchor inward. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The person who no longer values you, that is something that happens. Your reaction, that is what defines you. Do you grasp that? It may feel small, but it is everything. So here is the trick. Reframe your worth by practicing self-differentiation. When someone stops valuing you, move your attention from "why don't they value me?" to "what values do I refuse to surrender?" Because when you know what you will not compromise, not for love, not for approval, you reclaim your agency. You accept that you cannot control their judgment, but you can control yours. You cannot force respect from someone who has moved on, but you can continue to treat yourself with dignity. You cannot prevent someone else from undervaluing you, but you can prevent yourself from internalizing their underestimation. Now imagine this. You no longer wait for someone to notice you. You stop chasing echoes. You build your life around what you know deep inside is true. You are enough. You do not need their validation to earn your dignity. You do not need their praise to believe your capacity. In this moment, you begin to erect barriers, not walls of anger, but boundaries of self-respect. You let go of relationships that no longer mirror kindness, reciprocity, honesty. You hold firm to what you believe you deserve. And yes, it hurts. Loss always hurts, but pain refined is power. Grief understood is clarity. Silence accepted is peace. Here is the most powerful part of the trick, what many skip. You must practice this small act every single time you feel undervalued or ignored, because consistency builds strength. The first time, you might slip, turn to sadness. The second time, shame. The third time, anger. But each time you pause, breathe, stand with your value, you weaken the hold of those external judgments. So today, when someone doesn't value you anymore, do this. Quietly affirm your worth in your mind, choose dignity over desperation, and release the weight of their opinion. Let their silence, their ambivalence, their neglect be the canvas on which you paint how you want to live, with integrity, with self-respect, with courage. And yes, I want you to do something now. Below in comments, write this short phrase: I stand worthy always. Make it your anchor. Whenever doubt floods in, return to those words. They are simple, they are yours, and they cannot be taken away. So what is this Stoic trick? It's not revenge. It's not pretending you don't care. It's not disappearing in silence just to be chased. It's something far more grounded and transformational. The voluntary withdrawal of your emotional investment from things outside your control. This is the heart of Stoicism. Own only what is truly yours. Your thoughts, your values, your reactions, everything else, how others feel, how they behave, what they choose, is not up to you. When someone stops valuing you, you do not need to protest. You need to return to your own mind, to your own principles, to your own dignity. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. The reason it feels impossible is because we have trained ourselves since childhood to seek value through others, approval, recognition, validation. And when it is removed, we panic, as if our oxygen is being cut off. That panic, however, is a false signal. You are not dying, you are detaching. And detachment, when chosen, is liberation. That's the trick. Not to wait for others to choose you again, but to choose yourself with clarity and without hesitation. Epictetus taught that when someone insults you, the insult has no power unless you believe it. The same applies when someone disregards your worth. Their silence, their absence, their lack of appreciation, these are signals, but they are not truths. You assign meaning, and the meaning you assign either frees you or enslaves you. If you decide that their withdrawal means you are unlovable, not good enough, or broken, you have handed them your internal world. But if instead you see it as a moment to practice self-command, then the moment becomes your training ground. And this is where the Stoic trick becomes visible in practice. When the value you once received from others begins to fade, redirect that energy inward, not in bitterness but in rebuilding. You stop asking, why did they stop caring, and begin asking, what parts of myself did I stop nurturing? Maybe their validation distracted you from your own growth. Maybe their attention was a mirror, and now that it's gone, you must become your own reflection. The key is what Marcus Aurelius called returning to reason. He wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do." This is not indifference, this is focus. You do not stop caring because you are cold. You stop caring because your peace matters more than their inconsistency. Your clarity is not a weapon, it is your compass. Imagine you are standing in a room and someone walks out without explanation. You run after them, begging for answers. But in doing so, you abandon the room, you abandon yourself. The Stoic trick is to stay in the room, to remain with yourself, to wait, not for them, but with you. And in that waiting, to rebuild, to sit in silence and feel the ache of absence, but not let that ache make decisions for you. Seneca wrote, "A wise man is content with himself." He didn't mean we should isolate ourselves emotionally. He meant that no matter who comes or goes, our internal balance remains intact. The wise person does not collapse when others shift. They observe, they reflect, they adjust. But they do not beg for value because they already know where it lives. So how do you apply this? When someone no longer values you, do this. Pause, breathe, step back, not physically, but emotionally. Identify what part of their absence hurts the most. Is it the silence, the rejection, the confusion? Then ask, why does this matter so deeply to me? And answer honestly. Maybe it touches an old wound. Maybe it strikes at a fear of being alone. Whatever the answer, you face it. You do not run. Then you act. You remove yourself from the role of the seeker. You stop checking their messages. You stop waiting for closure. You stop performing for attention. Instead, you redirect your time to things that build your foundation: reading, exercise, silence, honest conversations with yourself, walks alone, small acts of self-respect. These are not distractions. These are tools of reconstruction. Over time, something strange will happen. You will miss them less, not because they meant nothing, but because you've remembered that you mean something. The person you became while waiting for their validation was smaller than the person you are now, self-led, quietly strong, rooted. The Stoic trick isn't magic. It's not about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about doing the harder thing, not letting the pain dictate your next move. It's about owning your emotions without letting them own you. That is self-command. That is freedom. That is Stoicism lived, not read. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter." When others stop valuing you, the right thing is not to chase, not to collapse, not to retaliate. The right thing is to remain with yourself, act with dignity, and walk forward, calm, clear, and whole. Now take this with you. Every time you are devalued, you are being invited, not punished. Invited to remember who you are without the noise. Invited to become stronger, not through force, but through stillness. Invited to detach not out of spite, but out of self-honoring. That invitation is painful, but it's sacred. And if you accept it, you won't return to the same patterns again. You will rise above them, because you have learned the trick, and more importantly, you have lived it. Part number 10, the silent shift. When someone stops valuing you, they rarely announce it. There's no thunder, no dramatic exit. It starts slowly. They don't answer your messages the way they used to. Your presence no longer lights up their world. Conversations feel forced. The space between replies grows, and the tone cools. It's not betrayal, it's erosion. A quiet, invisible decline of attention, interest, presence. And perhaps worst of all, they don't explain. You're left with silence, confusion, and 1,000 imagined reasons echoing in your mind. You begin to search for where it all went wrong. You rewind time. You analyze every moment, every sentence, every look. You wonder if it was something you said or didn't say. You feel the weight of rejection, even if they never used the word. You feel invisible, and in that moment, you begin to forget your own value. But here's where the Stoic draws the line. This is the moment that separates emotional collapse from emotional clarity, because what you're facing isn't just a loss of someone's attention. You're facing the deeper challenge, the pull to make someone else's perception the measure of your worth. And that, the Stoics would say, is the real danger. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, faced betrayal not just from strangers, but from his own family and friends. And yet he wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." At first glance, this feels impossible. What do you mean, choose not to be harmed? Doesn't it hurt when someone drifts away from you? Isn't pain automatic? Not to the Stoics. The Stoics believed that pain is natural, but suffering is optional. They taught that what hurts us is not the event itself, but our judgment of the event. It's not their distance that breaks us. It's our belief that their distance means we are unworthy, and that belief is something we can challenge. That belief is not reality, it's a choice. Here's the Stoic trick. When someone doesn't value you anymore, you don't need to chase. You don't need to explain. You don't need to fight for a place in someone's life where you're no longer welcome. You need to return to yourself. That return is hard. It feels like failure. It feels like abandonment. But it's actually the beginning of self-mastery. It's the silent shift from emotional dependency to emotional sovereignty. And it starts with a single act, refusing to argue with reality. They have pulled away. That is a fact. The Stoic accepts it, not with bitterness, not with pride, but with clarity. Because once you accept reality as it is, You become free to act within it, not against it. Now, what does it mean to act within reality? It means to stop fantasizing about how things should be, to stop building emotional stories around the situation, to stop assigning yourself the role of the abandoned, the forgotten, the unloved. It means to see things as they are and then ask, what is in my control here? And the answer is always the same, your response. That's all. You cannot control their feelings, their actions, their presence. You can only control what you think, what you choose to believe, and how you move forward. So when the silent shift happens, when someone stops valuing you, here's what the Stoic does. They pause. They sit in the discomfort. They allow the pain to exist without feeding it stories. They don't distract themselves with noise. They don't run to social media. They don't send a dozen messages trying to reignite a spark that's already faded. They simply observe. They feel. They endure. And in that endurance, they grow stronger. Because strength is not loud. Strength is quiet. It's the moment you stop needing someone else's attention to feel whole. It's the moment you realize that being valued by others is beautiful, but not necessary. What is necessary is that you value yourself. But let's go deeper. Why does it hurt so much when someone devalues us? Because we often confuse being valued with being safe. When someone values us, we feel seen, protected, appreciated. Their attention becomes a kind of emotional shelter. And when it's gone, we feel exposed, raw, abandoned. But the Stoics teach that real safety cannot come from external things, not from people, not from praise, not from relationships. Real safety comes from virtue, from living with integrity, clarity, and discipline. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because the path of growth often means walking away from validation. It means choosing to stay grounded, even when others misunderstand you, forget you, or discard you. So when someone doesn't value you, instead of thinking, how can I get them back? The Stoic asks, what part of myself did I give away in the hope they would stay? That's the shift. That's the point where pain becomes fuel for growth. Let's be honest, this isn't easy. It's far easier to chase, to beg, to blame. It's easier to drown in sorrow than to rise in discipline. But the Stoic path was never about ease. It's about strength, real, quiet, internal strength that doesn't depend on the external world behaving how you want. So what does the Stoic do next? They build. In the silence left by that person's absence, they create something, not out of revenge, but out of rebirth. They return to books, to writing, to long walks, to conversations with the self. They rebuild routines. They set higher standards, not for others, but for themselves. They say, if they no longer value me, I will not punish myself for it. I will become someone whose value is no longer negotiable. And here's the final insight of this part. Detachment is not rejection. It is redirection. It's the sacred act of taking back what you gave away too freely. Your attention, your energy, your emotional labor, and reinvesting it in your own life. Not to become cold, but to become clear. When someone doesn't value you anymore, the Stoic doesn't shrink. They don't collapse. They don't lash out. They simply step back, observe, and begin again with more wisdom, with deeper peace, with firmer boundaries. That is the silent shift. And that is the beginning of freedom. Part number 9. Detachment is not disinterest. Detachment. The word itself sounds cold to some, distant, almost uncaring. But to the Stoic, detachment is not an absence of love. It's a form of love in its purest, most resilient shape. It's a commitment to live according to nature, to accept what is given and what is taken, and to remain whole regardless of either. When someone no longer values you, detachment is not your punishment. It is your protection. It is not an act of vengeance. It is the recovery of your center. Let's be clear, the Stoic does not advocate emotional numbness. They don't tell you to stop caring. On the contrary, the Stoic deeply values connection, community, and virtue in relationships. But they also teach that the moment your peace depends entirely on someone else's treatment of you, you have enslaved yourself. That is not love, it is bondage. To detach, then, is not to stop loving. It's to stop clinging. It's to love without losing your identity, to show up fully and give sincerely, but without allowing your sense of worth to be held hostage by another person's shifting emotions. And when someone pulls away, when their tone changes, when their energy drops, when their presence fades, detachment is your way of saying, I remain whole, even as you drift. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." And there is no greater act of courage than choosing to let go of what you cannot control. It takes strength to love someone and not beg for their attention. It takes wisdom to walk away when staying would mean betraying yourself. It takes Stoic mastery to experience loss and not turn bitter, to feel hurt and not become hard. Here's the truth most people never want to say out loud. Not everyone who once valued you will value you forever. People change, priorities shift, interest fades. Sometimes it's because of something you did, often it's not. But either way, the Stoic doesn't waste time assigning blame. The cause matters less than the consequence. They no longer value you. Now what? This is where the average person spirals, overthinking, blaming, begging, building stories. But the Stoic becomes still. They detach, not to avoid pain, but to transform it. Because detachment is not emotional death, it is emotional discipline. It is seeing the situation for what it is, not what you wish it were, and choosing to act in alignment with your highest self. Let's put this into a concrete example. Imagine someone you deeply care about slowly stops showing interest in your life. They don't ask questions anymore. They don't celebrate your wins. They seem distracted when you speak. At first, you make excuses. They're busy, stressed, maybe going through something, and maybe they are. But then you begin to notice it's not temporary, it's consistent, it's intentional. They are no longer prioritizing you. Now, in that moment, you have a choice. You can react or you can reflect. If you react, you might confront them angrily. You might demand explanations. You might spiral emotionally, trying to fix it. But if you reflect, you ask a very different question. Is my dignity dependent on their consistency? And the Stoic would answer, no, your dignity is yours, always. From that reflection comes detachment. You begin to withdraw. Not your kindness, not your humanity, but your emotional dependency. You stop needing them to validate you. You stop rearranging yourself to keep them engaged. You stop shrinking to fit the fading space they offer. You reclaim your time, your energy, your peace. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When someone stops valuing you and you detach without resentment, you have won freedom. You have elevated yourself beyond neediness. You have walked the path of the sage. But let's also be honest, detachment hurts at first. It feels like loss. It feels like you're giving up. It feels like weakness. And that's because part of you was still holding on to the illusion that if you just loved harder, they'd come back. But love that requires self-abandonment is not love, it's self-neglect, and detachment is how you end the cycle. Now you might ask, how do I detach when I still care? The Stoic answer is this: you don't stop caring, you simply stop depending. You allow the feelings to exist, but you no longer let them lead. You acknowledge the bond, the memories, the history. You thank them, if needed, and then you let go, not out of anger, but out of alignment. You let go because your peace cannot be sacrificed for someone else's uncertainty. And this act, this difficult, quiet act of walking away with love still in your heart, is what Stoics would call strength guided by reason. There's another aspect of detachment that's often forgotten. It creates space. When you detach from people who no longer value you, You create room for people who will. You create time for passions that will grow you. You create silence in which your soul can speak again. You stop living reactively and begin living intentionally. Detachment is not closing the door out of spite. It's opening the door to your deeper self. It's choosing to no longer orbit around someone who's no longer looking at the sky with you. It's stepping out of emotional scarcity and into inner abundance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." That is the Stoic rhythm. Life brings people into our lives. Life takes them away. We enjoy them while they're here. We let them go when they leave. No clinging, no begging, just presence and then peace. So today, if someone has stopped valuing you, if you feel yourself slipping in their world, take a deep breath. Step back, not in fear, not in anger, but in clarity. Recognize that your value has not diminished. Their vision has, and that's their journey, not yours. And as you detach, remind yourself of this. You're not losing anything that was meant to stay. You're not being punished. You're being redirected towards something stronger, deeper, more aligned. Perhaps toward a better relationship, perhaps toward solitude, perhaps toward yourself. You don't need to be seen to exist. You don't need to be validated to matter. You don't need to be constantly loved to be worthy of love. You are whole, even in their absence. Detachment is not disinterest. It is the highest form of love, the kind that doesn't chain or chase, but chooses peace, clarity, and inner strength every single time. Part number 8, the danger of emotional debt. There's a hidden weight many carry after someone stops valuing them. It's not just sadness, not just confusion. It's a kind of invisible burden, a deep internal feeling that you owe them something, that you must prove your worth, that you must win them back, that maybe if you do everything right, they'll look at you again the way they once did. This is what the Stoics would call emotional debt, a self-imposed obligation born not from virtue, but from attachment. And it is this debt that quietly enslaves us to the opinions and behaviors of others. It makes us perform, apologize, shrink, contort ourselves in the hope that we will once again be accepted. But here's the truth. You owe no one the sacrifice of your dignity. The Stoics taught that our value is innate, not something others grant us, but something we carry within. And when you begin to feel like you must work to be seen, to be heard, to be chosen, you've already abandoned the Stoic path, because your peace now depends on a result that isn't yours to control. Let's pause here. How often do we believe that if someone stops caring, it must be because we failed? How often do we rewrite our personalities to match their silence? How often do we confuse attention with affection or validation with love? This is the danger. When someone stops valuing you, your first instinct might be to become smaller. You think, maybe I was too much, or maybe if I had said things differently. But the Stoic doesn't play that game. The Stoic doesn't bargain with their worth. They reflect, yes. They take accountability if necessary, but they do not negotiate who they are just to be accepted again. Seneca once said, "If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich." The opinion he speaks of is the ever-changing perception of others. One moment, you're everything they want. The next, they pull away. And if you tie your worth to that, you become emotionally bankrupt. So what do you do when you feel this emotional debt? You pay it back, not to them, but to yourself. You pay it back by reclaiming the energy you gave away. The emotional labor, the sleepless nights, the overthinking. You take all of that and you begin to reinvest it into things that make you stronger. Not as revenge, not to prove something, but because you remember who you are without needing their permission to be it. Here's something most people forget. When someone no longer values you, it doesn't mean your value disappears. It means their capacity to see your value has changed. And that's not your fault. That's their limitation. Your worth is not diminished just because they stopped paying attention. A diamond buried in dirt is still a diamond. The Stoic trick here is to detach from the need for emotional repayment. You don't need closure to move on. You don't need their apology to forgive. You don't need them to recognize your growth to continue evolving. Because when you wait for those things, you delay your healing. You trap yourself in a prison built on their actions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are all centered on regret, loss, and inadequacy, your soul will carry that weight. But if your thoughts are centered on presence, resilience, and truth, then no rejection can stain your peace. So you choose. You choose to let go. Not of the memory, not of the good moments, but of the illusion that you need them to be whole. You accept what happened. You feel the pain fully. But then you stop feeding it. You stop rehearsing the wound. You stop running the emotional debt cycle in your head. You say, enough. Now here's something practical, a mindset shift rooted in Stoicism. Every time your mind wants to beg for closure, ask instead, what can I learn from this? Every time you want to check if they're thinking about you, ask, what do I think of myself today? Every time you feel the need to be chosen, remember, you already were. By life, by reason, by virtue. These are not easy replacements. They require daily practice, discipline, stillness. But that is the Stoic path, to suffer less, not by having less pain, but by resisting the lies that pain wants you to believe. And yes, it will hurt, but the pain of losing someone's attention is far lighter than the pain of abandoning yourself to keep it. The Stoic accepts that some people will not walk the entire path with us. Some are only meant for a season. Some were never walking with us at all. They were just walking next to us until their path diverged. And the Stoic doesn't chase. They bow their head in quiet respect and keep walking, because what lies ahead is more important than who walked away. That's the secret to overcoming emotional debt. You stop paying interest on what you no longer owe. You stop waiting for a return on what you freely gave. You let go with peace, not because it didn't matter, but because you matter too much to stay in a place where you're not seen. So today, if you're feeling that debt, if someone's silence or distance has made you question your worth, remember this. No one can take from you what is rooted inside you, not their absence, not their rejection, not even their forgetfulness. You are not what they remember. You are what you continue to become. And becoming, that is your domain. That is where your control lives. That is where your Stoic power begins. Part number 7. Redefining value on Stoic terms. When someone stops valuing you, the first and most dangerous thought that often arises is this: if they don't see my worth, maybe I don't have any. That thought may not always be conscious, but it lingers beneath your reactions. It fuels your anxiety. It haunts your nights. It pushes you to replay every detail, to regret every word, to silently plead for another chance. But the Stoics teach that this is a false chain, a prison we enter willingly when we allow external perception to define internal truth. So let's start with a fundamental Stoic principle. Value is not given, it is lived. Your value is not a currency others trade. It's not measured in likes, attention, or consistency from someone else. Your value is in your character, in your virtue, in how you act when the world doesn't clap for you, when you're alone, when no one is watching, when someone withdraws their attention and you still walk forward with grace. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." When someone stops valuing you, that is your adversity. That is your invitation to prove, not to them, but to yourself, who you are when the world grows cold, when the applause fades, when love is not returned, because that's when the Stoic is born, not in peace, but in pressure. So let's go deeper. What do we actually mean when we say someone doesn't value us? Most of the time we mean they no longer treat us as we hoped they would. They stop showing up, they stop responding, they no longer prioritize us. And in response, our ego feels attacked. But the Stoic doesn't cling to hope, they cling to reason. They say, what is happening here and what is in my control? It is not within your control to force someone to see your light. It is not within your control to make them stay, make them care, or make them change. But it is entirely within your power to remain rooted in your integrity, your self-respect, your direction. So the Stoic trick here is this: redefine your value by withdrawing it from other people's hands. You say to yourself, they no longer see my worth. That is their vision. It says nothing about my substance. Think of a gold coin buried in the dirt. If someone walks by and says, this coin is worthless, does that change its value? Of course not. The coin doesn't lose worth because someone fails to recognize it. Your value is like that coin. It may be covered, ignored, overlooked, but it remains. The key is, do you remember it's there, even when others don't? Now, this requires emotional discipline, because everything in your heart may want to prove yourself, to chase, to fix the situation, to explain, to justify. But the Stoic pauses, the Stoic sits in that discomfort. They allow the pain to speak, but they do not obey it. Marcus Aurelius, in one of his most powerful reflections, wrote, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. Applied here, it means this: if someone stops valuing you, it's not because your worth changed. It's because they never truly understood it, or they forgot, or they are consumed with their own struggles, but their opinion is not your reality. So what do you do in practice? First, you withdraw the need to be validated. Not because you don't care, but because caring too much about the wrong source weakens you. You no longer wait for their message. You no longer hope for their return. You stop making plans for a reunion that might never come. Instead, you say, this chapter is changing, and I will not pause my life waiting for someone to read it again. Second, you refocus your energy on building your identity. Not the identity that exists for someone else, but the one that exists for the world, for virtue, for truth. You double down on what you value: discipline, kindness, honesty, clarity. You create, you move, you grow, not to prove your worth, but to live it. Third, and this is vital, you forgive. Not because they deserve it, but because your soul deserves to be free. When you carry resentment toward those who stopped valuing you, you are still tethered to their opinion. But when you forgive, not in words, but in decision, you say, I no longer carry the weight of your perception, I walk in mine. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you detach from needing their validation, the more powerful you become. You become someone who moves through life with a quiet confidence, not loud, not arrogant, but steady. People will notice. Some may return, others may not, but none of that will matter to you anymore because you've already returned to yourself. So the Stoic doesn't fight to be seen. They see themselves. The Stoic doesn't beg to be chosen. They choose to walk with virtue, even when it's lonely. The Stoic doesn't fall apart when someone walks away. They stand firm, they reflect, they let go, they grow. Redefining value on Stoic terms means no longer letting others write your worth. It means anchoring yourself so deeply in principle that no wave of abandonment can sweep you away. And when that shift happens, when you stop waiting to be valued and start living as valuable, you'll realize something profound. You were never unworthy. You were simply waiting for the day you'd stop seeking mirrors and start becoming the flame. Part number 6. The choice between reaction and reason. When someone stops valuing you, your body often knows before your mind admits it. You feel the coldness in their tone, the distance in their eyes, the lack of intention in their words. At first, you might deny it, make excuses, Say they're busy. Say they're going through something. But deep down, you already sense the truth. They've withdrawn. Not always physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And that's where the storm begins. Not outside, but within. Your thoughts race. Your emotions boil. You feel betrayed. You feel hurt. You feel panic rising, as if something vital is being taken from you. But the Stoics taught that this is the most critical moment, the place where your future forks into two distinct paths: reaction or reason. Reaction is immediate, it's impulsive, it's survival mode. You lash out, you chase, you write long messages trying to explain yourself. You question your worth. You act from fear, from the belief that if you don't act now, you'll lose everything. But the Stoic warns you, acting without reason is surrendering your power, because when you react, you are no longer leading yourself. You are being led by fear, by memory, by craving. And the more you react, the more you abandon the only thing that is truly yours, your judgment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Read that again, slowly. Your pain, he says, is not caused by their distance, but by the meaning you assign to it. Your worth was not actually removed. Your future was not destroyed. You simply believed that their behavior meant you were no longer valuable. That belief is the poison, and it's the belief the Stoic refuses to drink. So what is the Stoic path? It begins with the pause. When you feel the rush of emotion, stop. When the urge to send that message rises, pause. When your mind starts building stories about what their silence means, return to reason. This pause is not weakness, it is strength under pressure. It is the same principle that a trained warrior follows in battle: never swing in panic. The Stoic is a warrior of the mind. They don't deny emotion, but they don't obey it blindly either. Now let's talk about what happens during the pause. You ask yourself 3 questions. 1, is this within my control? 2, am I reacting to a fact or to my interpretation of it? 3, what action aligned with my principles can I take now? Let's break them down. Is this within my control? No. You cannot control whether someone values you. You cannot force them to see your worth. Their thoughts, behaviors, priorities, those are not yours to own. The only thing you can control is your response. Am I reacting to a fact or to my interpretation of it? The fact may be they're distant, they've changed. The interpretation might be, I'm not enough. They're punishing me, I'm losing them. The Stoic separates the two. They deal with facts, they challenge interpretations. What action aligned with my principles can I take now? The Stoic acts with integrity, with clarity, with long-term vision. Maybe that means stepping back. Maybe it means letting go. Maybe it means having one calm conversation. But it never means begging, accusing, or abandoning yourself. This is the power of reason over reaction. And it's not just theory, it's practice. Daily, hourly, sometimes minute by minute, because the mind will return to fear again and again. The trick is to notice the fear and not make it your compass. There's a quote from Epictetus that embodies this perfectly. When something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude toward it. You can either accept it or resent it. Resentment is a form of reaction. Acceptance is the fruit of reason. You get to choose every time. Let's look at what happens over time. When you choose reaction, your world gets smaller. You lose control. You say things you regret. You give your peace away. You become addicted to their approval. You chase moments. You exhaust yourself. But when you choose reason, your world expands. You become calmer, clearer. You protect your energy. You begin to see that their fading value is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your detachment, your strength, your return to self. One of the most difficult truths the Stoic accepts is this: not everyone is meant to walk the entire journey with you. Some people are chapters, some are sentences, some are just a line. The reactionary mind clings, the rational mind releases. This doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop expecting love to look a certain way. You stop needing love to arrive on your timeline. You stop making someone else's presence the condition for your peace. And here's the paradox. The less you react, the more you heal. The more you respond with reason, the more you rebuild confidence. You begin to trust your ability to face hard moments without collapsing. And that trust, that's your new foundation. So, in practice, what does the Stoic do when someone stops valuing them? They observe, they reflect, they accept, they choose reason. They don't chase, they don't beg, they don't accuse, they act with dignity, they speak with restraint, they move with intention. Because ultimately, how you respond to someone who no longer values you is a mirror of how much you value yourself. And that is the Stoic difference. Part number 5, holding the line of self-respect. There's a moment in every person's life when they must choose between two paths, the path of desperation or the path of dignity. It often comes quietly. No one announces it. No one warns you. It shows up the day someone no longer values your presence, your voice, your time, and you feel the sharp urge to prove your worth, to fight for recognition. But this is the exact moment where the Stoic draws the line, not in rebellion, not in pride, but in self-respect. Let's be honest, when someone fades from your life, when their tone changes, when their effort dies, the temptation to chase can feel overwhelming. You want to fix it. You want to show them why you're worthy. You want to keep the connection alive, even if you have to bleed a little to do it. But the Stoic sees this impulse for what it is, a trap. Not a trap set by the other person, but by your own misunderstanding of where worth truly comes from. According to Epictetus, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And the opinion that hurts you the most in this situation is the belief that your worth has somehow decreased because they've stopped choosing you. But their actions are not a reflection of your value. They're a reflection of their perception, their priorities, their internal world. That's their burden, not yours. The Stoic response? Hold the line. Holding the line doesn't mean building walls or pretending not to care. It means standing firm in your principles when everything in you wants to abandon them. It means respecting yourself when someone else no longer does. It means refusing to explain yourself to those who have already decided not to listen. This is not arrogance, it's clarity. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, reminds us just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. The right thing in the face of fading affection is not to plead. It's not to lower your standards. It's not to sacrifice your voice just to stay close to someone who is drifting. The right thing is to remain aligned with who you are, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Now let's talk about why holding the line feels so difficult, because on the other side of that line is fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of missing out on what once felt real. These fears are powerful, and they will whisper lies to you. They'll say, if you let them go, no one else will come. They'll say, this is your fault. You have to fix it. They'll say, you're not enough. But the Stoic knows that fear is not truth. It's a reaction, and reactions can be mastered. So instead of bowing to fear, the Stoic breathes. They return to reason. They look the fear in the face and say, even if I am alone, I will not abandon myself. Even if they forget me, I will remember who I am. Even if they no longer see my worth, I will not trade it for their attention. This is the strength the world rarely teaches, but the Stoics lived it. There's something deeply transformative about staying true to yourself when it would be easier to bend. It builds something inside you, a quiet power, a calm that doesn't depend on others to survive. That's what self-respect does. It plants roots. And when you're rooted, you don't chase every wind that blows your way. You remain. And from that stillness, something greater grows. But holding the line is not just internal, it's also practical. It means not sending that message you know comes from fear. It means not rewriting your values just to match someone else's preferences. It means walking away from places where you are tolerated instead of valued. It means being honest with yourself about how much energy you've wasted trying to be chosen, when you could have been choosing yourself all along. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And this right here is your adversity. This is your chance to prove that you are no longer at the mercy of someone else's affection, that you don't collapse just because someone forgot your name, that your self-respect is not a costume you wear to impress others, but your foundation, your compass, your armor. And yes, it will hurt. There is no pretending that letting go of someone's attention is painless, but the pain of holding the line is clean. It heals. The pain of abandoning yourself for someone else is infected. It lingers. Choose the pain that leads to peace. That's the Stoic choice. And here's something crucial. The way you treat yourself in this moment sets the tone for every future relationship. If you chase those who devalue you, you teach yourself to settle. But if you hold the line, you tell the world, this is the standard, this is the level, this is what I will not compromise. And you attract not just people, but situations, opportunities, and peace that match that frequency. So today, if you feel forgotten, if someone's attention has faded, if you're tempted to shrink just to fit in their world again, pause. Breathe. Remember the line. The one you drew when you realized your worth was not up for debate. Stand on it, even if your knees shake, even if your heart aches, even if the silence feels unbearable. Because on the other side of that silence is something sacred, your self-respect, untouched, unbent, unbroken, and that is the beginning of true freedom. Part number 4. The mirror of indifference. There is a particular kind of silence that wounds deeper than words. It's the silence of someone who once cared, once reached out, once lit up when you entered the room, and now they look right through you. That silence is not empty, it's loaded. It whispers, "You're not important anymore." And in your chest, something clenches. Most people respond to that silence with desperation. They try harder, they get louder, they send messages, they apologize for things they didn't do, they beg to be seen again. But the Stoic does not follow this path. The Stoic understands something crucial. Indifference is not always an insult, it's a mirror. And how you react to it reveals your own inner stability or lack thereof. Let's be clear, indifference from someone you care about is painful. But pain to the Stoic is not the enemy. Pain is a signal. It shows you where you've placed your identity, where you've outsourced your sense of self. And when someone's coldness breaks you, the Stoic doesn't ask why they're doing this to you. The Stoic asks, why does their approval still have that much power over you? Epictetus said, when someone acts badly toward you, remember that they do so because they believe it is right. It is not their action, but your judgment of it that disturbs you. If someone has grown indifferent toward you, they may believe they are justified, or they may simply no longer feel the bond. Either way, it is their mind, not yours. Their choice, not your fault. Here's the Stoic trick. When faced with indifference, become your own source of attention. This doesn't mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop collapsing when they stop caring about you. You begin to treat their silence as data, not identity. You begin to ask, what can I learn from this stillness? What in me is still attached to their validation? What parts of myself have I abandoned in my pursuit of being chosen? These are not easy questions, but they're necessary because the only way to stop being ruled by another person's emotional weather is to become your own internal climate, steady, predictable, resilient. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." This doesn't mean you pretend indifference doesn't hurt. It means you recognize that the hurt comes from your internal reaction, not from the external event. And once you identify that, you can begin to reclaim power. Let's look at what this looks like in daily life. Someone you love starts withdrawing. They're no longer affectionate. They're no longer invested. You notice it. You feel it. And instead of acting immediately, sending a message, asking what's wrong, pushing for connection, you pause. You don't repress your emotion. You acknowledge it, but you don't act from it. Instead, you go inward. You ask, what value did I attach to their attention? Why is their indifference shaking me? Maybe you've equated being seen with being safe. Maybe you've linked their approval to your self-esteem. Maybe you've built your identity around their presence. All of these realizations are gifts, uncomfortable ones but necessary. And then you choose your response. The reactive path would try to reawaken their interest. The Stoic path strengthens yours. You stop performing. You stop seeking. You stop trying to bend into a shape that fits their fading desire. You return to your values. You focus on what you can control, your words, your habits, your rituals. You write, you train, you reflect, you move forward, not out of spite, but out of self-honor. Because here's the paradox. The more you chase indifference, the more you lose yourself. But the more you accept it without resistance, the more deeply you reconnect with who you are. There's a story about Socrates that reflects this perfectly. When he was insulted by a man in public, he didn't respond. A student asked him, "Why didn't you say something?" Socrates replied, "If someone kicks me, must I kick back? If a donkey brays at me, must I bray in return?" The point is not to degrade others, but to elevate yourself. You don't need to echo the energy given to you. You don't need to chase what retreats. You don't need to demand recognition from someone who no longer offers it. Because when you no longer require their validation, you become unshakable. This is what the Stoics meant by freedom. Not a life without pain, but a life where pain doesn't dictate your choices. Seneca wrote, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable, and indifference is your battlefield. Not to defeat the other person, but to defeat the parts of yourself that still believe you are less when they love you less." So what's the practice? You notice their withdrawal, you feel the sting, and then you resist the urge to react. You breathe, you reflect, you journal. You ask, what would the stronger version of me do in this moment? And you do that, and over time their indifference no longer defines your worth. It becomes background noise, because your inner voice has grown louder, clearer, wiser. You stop asking, why don't they care? And start asking, why do I keep handing them the pen to write my story? Eventually you realize you don't need them to value you, because you've learned to value yourself in silence, in solitude, and even in the face of their indifference. Part number 3, freedom through acceptance. There comes a moment, somewhere in the process of being devalued by someone, when your heart breaks, not from what they did, but from what you refused to accept. You knew they were pulling away, you felt the disconnection, you saw the signs, and still you held on. You clung to hope. You told yourself stories. You waited for them to realize what they had lost, but in doing so, you delayed your freedom, because true freedom, the Stoics taught, begins the moment we stop resisting reality. Most people think acceptance is weakness, that it means giving up, that it means letting others treat you poorly without fighting back, but this is a misunderstanding. Stoic acceptance is not surrender. It's strategy. It's not letting things happen to you. It's seeing things as they are, without the fog of desire or denial. It is the sober, courageous acknowledgement of what you cannot change, and the decision to focus entirely on what you can. Epictetus said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." When someone no longer values you, the pain often comes not from the loss itself, but from your refusal to accept the loss. You wish things were different. You rehearse how things should have gone. You live in memories, and each time you do, you suffer, because you're clashing with what is. The Stoic trick is this: practice radical acceptance, not to avoid the pain, but to move through it. You look at the situation directly and say, "They no longer see me the way they once did. That is the truth. I cannot control it. I will not fight it. I will respond with dignity." This act of facing the truth without flinching is one of the greatest forms of inner power, because most people spend years running from the truth. They bury it under distractions. They seek closure where none will come. They project blame. They try to rewrite the story, but the Stoic understands all of that is wasted energy. That energy could be used for rebuilding, for reflection, for movement forward. Let's talk about the power of this kind of acceptance in real life. You discover someone has stopped prioritizing you. Maybe a partner, a friend, a family member. They no longer reach out. Their energy is cold, their presence minimal, and you feel the sting of rejection. The initial impulse is to resist, to ask them why, to fix it, to prove yourself, but resistance prolongs the wound. Acceptance begins the healing. Acceptance means you don't make excuses for their absence. You don't romanticize the past. You don't try to manipulate the future. You simply say, "This is where we are. This is how they've chosen to show up, and I will not degrade myself trying to reverse it." This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, look things in the face and know them for what they are. He didn't say look at them and hope they change. He said to see clearly, because once you see clearly, you can act wisely. And wisdom in this context means making peace with what is, so you can protect what still matters, your peace, your values, your future. Let's go deeper. What keeps us from accepting the truth when someone stops valuing us? It's usually ego and fear. The ego says, how could they not want me? I must get them back. Fear says, if they leave, I'll be alone. Both voices are rooted in a lie, that your worth depends on their opinion and your safety depends on their presence. The Stoic exposes that lie with a single question. What is actually under my control here? Can you force them to care? No. Can you change their priorities? No. Can you rewrite the past? No, but you can choose your next step. You can protect your energy. You can preserve your dignity. You can rebuild your inner world. That's what Stoic acceptance looks like in practice. It's the moment you delete the unsent message, the moment you stop checking their page, the moment you stop performing the fantasy of maybe they'll change. It's the moment you breathe deeply and say, I don't need to be chosen to be whole. I don't need to be pursued to be valuable. I accept their absence and I remain. And this isn't a one-time decision, it's daily, sometimes hourly. Some wounds echo louder at night, but every time you resist the urge to beg for what's already gone, you strengthen the muscle of acceptance. And over time, that muscle becomes armor, not to protect you from pain, but to carry you through it. Seneca said, fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. When you resist reality, it drags you like a chain. When you accept it, you walk forward with it, even when your heart aches. That's courage, that's control, that's the soul of Stoicism. So today, if someone no longer values you and you feel the ache of their absence, don't run from it. Don't fight the truth. Sit with it. Speak it out loud if you must. Write it down, face it, and then ask, how do I live wisely in light of this? Maybe it means creating space. Maybe it means ending the relationship. Maybe it means staying, but with new boundaries. Whatever the decision, let it come from clarity, not from fear, from calm, not from craving. Because in the end, your freedom was never taken from you. It was waiting on the other side of acceptance. Part number 2, the power of emotional economy. Imagine your attention, your care, your emotional labor as currency. It is limited, it is precious. And every time you give it to someone who no longer values it, you are making an investment with no return. You're pouring water into a cracked vessel. You're writing letters to a wall. And eventually, you are left emotionally bankrupt, not because you lacked worth, but because you didn't guard it wisely. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. They lived with the principle of emotional economy. Only spend your energy on what is within your control. When someone stops valuing you and you continue to spend emotional resources trying to earn their attention, you are violating this principle. You are placing your peace into someone else's unstable hands. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." In our context, this means stop trying to convince someone of your value and start living it. Stop explaining yourself to those who've already decided not to understand you. Stop offering your loyalty where there is no reciprocity. This is not bitterness, it's economy, it's wise stewardship of your internal world. Let's go deeper. Why do we keep giving emotional energy to people who've stopped caring? Because part of us still believes we can change their mind. That if we show how kind we are, how patient, how loyal, they'll return. But the Stoics would call this what it is, emotional fantasy, a delusion rooted in attachment, not love, not reason. Epictetus warned us clearly, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And someone's perception of you, their attention, their affection, their commitment, is not in your control. No amount of effort, logic, or love can force someone to value you if they've already decided not to. And trying to change that? That's how you waste the currency of your soul. So what do? You shift from reaction to regulation. You begin to guard your emotional spending. Every time you want to send that text, ask yourself, is this going to bring me closer to peace or further from it? Every time you feel tempted to prove yourself, ask, would Marcus Aurelius need to explain his worth? Every time you start blaming yourself, remind yourself, their failure to see me does not change who I am. This is the Stoics' emotional budget. Spend on what builds you. Save when the heart is impulsive. Invest in what aligns with virtue. Never go into debt trying to buy someone's love. This economy creates emotional wealth, not loud, flashy confidence, but quiet, grounded dignity. You stop chasing closure. You stop performing. You stop emotionally bleeding for someone who wouldn't offer you a bandage. Instead, you rebuild your inner fortress, brick by brick, clarity, focus, silence, intention. And with this wealth comes something greater, independence. You no longer need their words to feel good about your day. You no longer need their attention to feel whole. You begin to enjoy your own company. Your mind becomes sharper, your heart steadier. You begin to notice things, how much time you wasted trying to be enough for someone who never defined their standards. How often you doubted yourself to keep them comfortable. How many times you lowered your voice so theirs could be louder. That's over now. You reclaim your energy. You redirect it into your work, into your body, into your craft, into quiet mornings and calm evenings, into books, into breath, into building. And as you do, something subtle but profound happens. You stop remembering them with pain, not because they didn't matter, but because they no longer define your direction. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." And in this context, bravery means refusing to spend another ounce of your emotional wealth on someone who doesn't see your value. It means choosing restraint over reaction, clarity over chaos, and integrity over impulse. And the next time you feel that ache, that urge to reach out, to explain, to be seen, pause. Remember your economy. Ask, is this energy wisely spent? If the answer is no, return. Return to yourself, to stillness, to self-respect, to the deep, unshakable realization that the only love you ever truly needed was your own. Part number 1, becoming the source. When someone stops valuing you, the instinct is to search outward, to find new people, new places, new validation to replace what was lost. The absence creates a void, and the human tendency is to fill it. But the Stoics did not believe in filling emotional gaps with noise. They believed in returning to the source, and that source is you, not your ego, not your image, but your inner core, your hegemonicon, as Epictetus called it, the ruling faculty of the soul, that part of you which remains untouched by others' praise or rejection, that inner sanctuary that remains calm in a storm. The Stoic trick, the one that changes everything, is this: become the source of what you were seeking from others. You wanted to be seen, see yourself. You wanted to be heard, listen to your thoughts. You wanted to be understood, learn your own patterns. You wanted to be chosen. Choose yourself, fully, fiercely, daily. This shift is not emotional armor, it's emotional awakening. It's the realization that the more you rely on external validation, the more volatile your self-worth becomes. But when you reclaim the ability to define your value internally, you become untouchable. Not because you're indifferent, but because you are whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." If you are suffering because someone no longer values you, ask yourself, what was I hoping to receive from them? And why am I withholding it from myself? Because that's the hidden truth. We often abandon ourselves while trying to be loved by others. We shrink to fit, we twist to please, we hide to be accepted, and in that hiding we forget our source. But the Stoic doesn't forget. The Stoic remembers, through solitude, through silence, through hardship, that the most powerful relationship you will ever have is with your own reasoned self. That's where your decisions are born. That's where your values live. That's where your peace is protected. So how do you become the source? You begin by stopping. No more chasing, no more convincing, no more waiting for closure, no more bargaining with ghosts. You sit still. You breathe. You allow the pain to speak, not to control you, but to reveal you. Then you build, slowly, intentionally. You re-establish your routines. You invest in your mind, read, study, reflect. You re-engage with your body, move, rest, nourish. You repair your environment, clean, organize, prepare, and you reconnect with your soul, meditate, journal, return to your higher voice. The person who once took up so much space in your mind begins to fade, not because they're irrelevant, but because you're full again. The source is flowing. You are no longer dry, desperate, dependent. You are giving to yourself, not as a performance, not to prove a point, but because you now understand what the Stoics always taught. No one can take from you what you've given to yourself first. Seneca said, "As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." And the same is true for relationships. It's not about how long they stayed, but about what they awakened in you. If their departure taught you to return to yourself, it was not a loss. It was a lesson, and the ultimate lesson, that everything you sought in others already lived within you. The affection, the peace, the validation, the love. You were the source all along. So now you rise. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. You walk forward, not hoping they'll notice, but knowing you don't need them to. You speak less, think more, live fuller. You become your own source, and everything changes. There's a strange peace that begins to grow when you finally stop fighting for someone to value you. Not because you've stopped caring, and not because you've become bitter, but because you've realized something deeper, something unshakable. You realize that the person who failed to see your worth never had the final word on it. Their opinion was only ever that, an opinion. And opinions, the Stoics remind us, are fleeting, unstable, and almost always rooted in things beyond truth. That realization, as simple as it may sound, is what begins to set you free. At first, there's grief, not just for them, but for the version of yourself that kept bending, compromising, shrinking, hoping. You grieve for the moments you begged for attention with silence. You grieve for the energy you poured into someone who was already halfway out the door. You grieve for the stories you told yourself at night, trying to believe that maybe they still cared. Maybe you just had to wait longer, try harder, love more. But now you know better. Not because the pain is gone, but because the clarity has arrived. This clarity doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't come with fireworks or fanfare. It comes in the quiet moments, when you stop checking your phone, when you stop looking for their name in a list of messages that never arrive, when you catch yourself no longer planning conversations they'll never have with you. In those moments, you realize the shift wasn't theirs, it was yours. You're not the same. And that's the gift of the storm. It doesn't leave you untouched, but it can leave you stronger. Diary Stoic was never meant to give you comfort in the form of distraction. It was meant to hand you tools that the greatest minds in history, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, used when they faced betrayal, loss, and abandonment. They didn't rise by avoiding pain. They rose by walking through it with virtue. They reminded us that the most powerful response to being devalued is not revenge, not silence, not withdrawal. It's discipline, it's dignity, it's the unwavering decision to remain aligned with who you are, even when others forget who you were to them. When someone stops valuing you, the first instinct is to become smaller, to twist yourself into something more palatable, to become the version of yourself you think they might want again. But that version of you was never real. It was survival. And survival is not the goal anymore. Living with intention is. Living with truth is. Living with integrity is. You don't need to become anything other than exactly who you are when your soul is at peace. If someone cannot value that, the loss is theirs, not yours. Every Stoic knew that the external world was unpredictable. People come and go, love fades, friends betray, circumstances shift. But they also knew that inside us lives a force that can withstand all of that. A force called logos, reason, principle. That's the part of you that remains untouched by gossip, heartbreak, or neglect. That's the part of you that wakes up every morning and still chooses to do what's right, even when no one's watching, especially then. So what do you do now that you've walked through the fire? You don't look back. You don't rehearse the wound. You don't reopen what life has already closed. You look inward. You remember that your worth is not proven by how others treat you, but by how you treat yourself when they don't. And you begin to rebuild, not in defiance, but in devotion to yourself, to your path, to the kind of life that does not rise and fall based on who stays and who leaves. There will still be moments of doubt. There will still be shadows. That's natural. But doubt is not your enemy. It's your teacher. Every time you feel that sting of being forgotten, let it remind you not of their absence, but of your presence. Every time your mind wanders to what was, let it gently return to what is. Because what is, right now, is this. You are healing. You are choosing yourself. You are becoming someone who will never again beg to be seen, because you see yourself now. And what a thing to witness, someone rising from rejection, not with vengeance, but with vision. Someone who no longer reacts, but responds. Someone who can sit in silence and not feel alone. Someone who can let go, not because they don't feel, but because they've learned that peace is too expensive to trade for temporary validation. You will continue forward, not waiting for them to come back, not wishing they'd see you again, but walking, building, creating, living. And one day when they remember you, when your name echoes in their quiet moments, it will not matter, because you'll have already moved on, not because you stopped caring, but because you started living. Let this be your foundation now. Your value is not up for negotiation. Your peace is not on sale. Your time is not currency for people who cannot afford your presence. You walk with virtue. You speak with clarity. You hold the line, you remain. And now, to anchor it, leave a comment below with just 3 words: I remain. Say it for yourself. Say it as a vow. Say it as the final severing of the cord between your worth and their approval. This isn't just a video. This is a return to your calm, your strength, your Stoic center. You've heard the philosophy. You've felt the shift. You've remembered who you are. And from this moment forward, you remain. This is Diary Stoic. Welcome home.